Hello everybody and welcome to Artravesty. Today is our third installment and we're still in the Sistine Chapel, which is inexhaustible, just as the creator of its ceiling and its Last Judgment was inexhaustible, and he certainly knew his Bible. And well, here goes. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to dominate the day and the lesser light to dominate the night. ... And there was evening, and there was morning, a fourth day. Well, here we have it. And this is Michelangelo's take on it. It is again a double feature, as was Temptation and Expulsion. In this case, the Almighty is represented in the act of creation. He is represented front and back. Well, Michelangelo was more of a sculptor than a painter, at least he thought himself more of a sculptor than a painter, and perhaps we can understand his point of view, because in a sculpture one can actually see the object all around, whereas that's not the case in painting. Well, until modern art destroyed natural appearances, literally crushed them to pieces, so to speak. Well, Michelangelo had the idea of how to show front and back about 400 years before Picasso did. And here we have it. The Almighty, superlative, spectacular, the great creator of the universe, and the same creator, perhaps a little less spectacular and less magnificent, and for some reason deciding to divest himself of the lower part of his garments and to expose his derriere, literally mooning us from 60 feet up while creating the sun and the moon. Now, it's very tempting to use the English expression to moon, but well, Michelangelo did not speak English, and I don't know if the expression even existed at the time in English.
Oh, why don't you both come down? There's nobody about. Oh, do come on. I'll be in the nursery when you're fit to be seen.
Michelangelo did speak Latin, Michelangelo did speak Italian. And from what I gather, the idiom, the English idiom, doesn't really translate into either Italian or into Latin. So the reason why the Almighty is swiveling around the planets with his derriere nude will remain a mystery. However, if any of you out there can think of a parallel idiom, I should be very grateful for the enlightenment. Meanwhile, while this is a mystery, another thing is not, and that is that the Almighty seems to rotate around the planets. Well, Nicholas Copernicus was alive and well at the time, about 40 years old or so, and he had by then formulated his heliocentric theory with the sun at the center of our universe and all the planets rotating around it, as opposed to the geocentric universe with the Earth at the center, which was held unassailable by the Church. Now, Copernicus's findings will not be published until after his death for fear of persecution by that same church. But all the intellectuals at the time, including, well, the church intellectuals, knew about it and were wildly excited about it. Well, it's again very tempting to think that perhaps Michelangelo combined science and faith in launching his Jehovah into the stratosphere to circle around his planets, because, well, after all, why shouldn't the creator obey his own universal laws? Now, we don't have any documentary evidence to the fact, because Michelangelo does not mention it in his letters, but then he wouldn't, because it would be dangerous, but those with the eyes to see, as we have the eyes to see, can kind of see for themselves. And there he goes, painting it in the most important chapel of Christendom, right above the altar, right above the Pope's head, which is curious. Another approach is, who knows, perhaps Michelangelo wanted to show a middle finger to the Pope, or the Italian version of it, because it is well known that he and the Pope, Julius II, quarreled bitterly throughout the 4 years while the ceiling was being painted from 1508 to 1512. Now, Vatican will not accept the heliocentricity until 1979, officially accept, and that's 40 plus years ago. Meanwhile, they burnt Giordano Bruno at the stake in the year 1600. They indicted Galileo in 1633 for upholding heliocentricity. Meanwhile, there was heliocentricity right above the Pope's head on the ceiling, with the Almighty as the main witness for the defense. Perhaps the truth is hidden somewhere under a tree, as the truth so often is.